Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Straczynski. Thanks so much for joining us on episode number 88 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Today's guest is Amanda Botfeld, author of A Girl's Guide to Poker, poker power instructor, and author of numerous articles for such prestigious outlets as the Huffington Post and the Wall Street Journal, as well as poker media outlets, including Cardplayer Lifestyle, 888 Poker Magazine, and right here at CardsChat. She's also got great poker playing chops, as last year she and her father came in at third place in the WSOP Tag Team Tournament. On today's show, we'll get to know her a little better. Amanda, welcome to the CardsChat podcast.
Thank you for that warm welcome.
Well earned. You've certainly done a lot in your career, and we're definitely going to go through all of that. But folks who watch the show or who listen to the show never necessarily know, when are we recording this? And I have to point out, you're in Pacific time right now. You're recording at midnight. So I guess you keep poker player hours to a degree.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. Poker hours.
Yeah. So I guess you're more of a night owl naturally, or this sort of happened over time?
Ever since I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
Oh, I remember staying up till 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. in fourth grade, reading books. Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. So books, writing, that's definitely sort of been your cup of tea for a while. I mean, well, we start off, each interview, each conversation, getting into, the person's poker origin story. I know that your dad taught you how to play poker when you were a teenager, but I'm just wondering, how did that come about? You sort of saw him playing, and he's like, Amanda, come over here. Let me show you this poker thing. How did that start?
So learned it even younger. As a kid, I remember when I was in second grade, my dad got me this battery operated poker game. Like it was almost like those slot machine games, like video poker, right?
Sure, yeah, I have the same
video poker game from our local drugstore. It's called Rite Aid. And I played it until the batteries died. So right at the beginning, I was hooked, but like many people, I would just play kind of on New Year's with my dad and my family, and I thought I knew how to play. And then I went to the casino and got my backside handed to me. And the story of that is I was living in Washington, D.C. I was working as a writer there, and they opened up the brand new MGM National Harbor.
Oh, sure.
And my roommate at the time dragged me there. And he's like, because everyone was going there. Like there was lines out the door, whether you gambled or not. And I was like, oh yeah, I know how to play poker. And I sit down and I'm so bad that this one guy turns to me and he says, you played that hand terribly. And I said, how so? And he said, well, for starters, I could see your cards.
Oh boy.
And he was outside of that was my starting point. And I realized I was terrible. And in a way, I found that provocative. And I was like, I am going to get good at this game. And what I did is I made 180 flashcards from a pre-flop chart I found online of which cards to play when. And they were very girly. They were color-coded with stickers, with raise, call, fold. And, and I went to a bookstore 45 minutes away out in Virginia to find where they'd have a poker book. So I would call all these bookstores in DC and they were like, huh? When I was like, poker, right? Texas Hold'em, that was not the culture. And, by the time I entered my first tournament, I won first place.
There you go. Well, I remember seeing a picture of those flashcards online somewhere. I was definitely.
Oh yeah, we talked about an article.
Right, and it harkens back in a way, sort of to the pioneers of the game, like the Doyle Brunsons, who kind of learned the game on their own. You know what I mean? You took it upon yourself to make yourself better, not necessarily with the benefit of all this other stuff. Maybe later, we'll get into what you do today to study, but it certainly came from within. So there were no, with your dad or on your own, or maybe during college, any sort of home games or getting into online poker. There was none of that in your story.
None. And I think that's a big gap. There was one time I went to a college party and they played poker. And I remember playing it and I remember getting super lucky and I thought I was the best. But that was one time in my entire whole college history. And obviously I think that's a major gap with getting more women into poker is there just aren't as many opportunities casually to play and recreationally to play. It's like you kind of need to really dive into it because none of my girlfriends ever invited me. My dad used to play online before Black Friday. He didn't play after, although I do have a fun story about me getting him into online poker with his free rolls. But yeah, it was really kind of, I had just moved to DC from Los Angeles. And, I had just written an article for the LA Times about dating apps and how sick I was of them. And I was 23, 24, and I was so done with going to bars and clubs on the weekend and dates. And then I found poker because I didn't know anyone in DC. And I was like, this is something I can do on a Saturday night. This is like somewhere to be where, because I remember feeling like once the workday was over and I had the weekend, I felt so isolated. I just had nothing to do and I didn't know anyone. And so going to play poker at the MGM was really, really exciting and kind of took over my life.
Well, it's definitely a great way to get out and meet people. It is a social game by nature.
I met my husband.
There you go. David, right?
David, yes.
Cool.
It's confusing because him and my dad have the same name.
Okay. Well, so it was one or the other. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, I met my husband in the poker table.
Awesome. Also, clearly you're attracted to the social aspect of the game. It's a great way
100%.
to meet people. And also you said, that firsthand that, that you lost there, that you were motivated to get better. Is there anything about the game itself that's intriguing, inherently to you?
Gosh, it's like, what isn't? My personality, I'm not a wallflower. I'm bolder and like, I love the idea of, I like tournament poker where you have the chance to be aggressive and apply pressure. And especially when I was that age and I was working in a male dominated industry, I felt, especially because of my age, even more so than being a woman, especially because of my age, I felt very small. And when you're in politics, it's very, very difficult to feel like your voice doesn't matter and you're not making an impact. And I felt like I was this barking puppy, like I was this 23-year-old, like, please listen to me, please listen to me. And then what I loved about poker is no matter what you say, when you're putting, when you're betting chips and you're putting someone to a decision for their tournament life, they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And I felt like, people use the word empowerment lightly, but I felt real power. Not to sound crazy, I felt like really in charge and like, my actions spoke louder than my words when I was betting with chips.
Oh, that's fascinating. And like, at what point were you sort of able, everyone knows, to be very successful, generally speaking, at this game, you kind of have to dissociate the money aspect of like, okay, I'm betting a car now, or I'm betting a really nice fancy dinner. At what point did you feel sort of able to do that? And everyone knows, when you're young, first starting off in your career, you don't necessarily have a gigantic bankroll to compete with perhaps more established players.
Yeah. Honestly, I probably would have been better off being more cautious. So that wasn't an issue for me. But that's the reason why. So, I teach classes for this organization, Poker Power. And I'm also an ambassador for PLAN, Poker League of Nations, which is another women's poker group. And I think one of the reasons why it's so important for women to play poker, but particularly tournament poker, is because you get the experience of having capital. You buy in for $100, $120, you get 20,000 chips, 30,000 chips.
Right.
And you have the experience of, now that you're not just trying to play the minimum and get by, how do you want to allocate your resources? How risky do you want to be? How much do you want to invest in any single pot? And I think being able to play with money with freedom, which anyone can really do in a tournament because it equalizes, how many chips you have, I think is really, really important. and really meaningful if used correctly.
Oh, excellent answer. And it is true, even the World Series of Poker main event, even the Negreanu's, Ivies, and Helmuths, they start with the same amount you do. All you need is
Exactly.
that buy-in. Yeah, I like it. Well, when you graduated college at UC Santa Cruz, you have a degree in Jewish studies. We're both members of the tribe proudly. I don't necessarily know, like, how does that jive with, getting into poker, into writing? So at what point do you sort of shift? Did you have maybe a different idea of what you wanted to do?
That's a good question. Fun fact, though, the 2015 World Series of Poker at main event, half the table was Jewish and/or Israeli.
Yes.
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 So I think there's more of us than you would think.
Yes.
Basically, I was working as a writer in DC, and it related to my degree. And I knew at that point I wanted to write a book. And my book, it's called A Girl's Guide to Poker, and it's poker told, it's almost like Legally Blonde meets Poker for Dummies. It's like, speaking about poker in a way that's fun, funny, feminine, upbeat, all that. But the idea at the time was I didn't want it just to be a girl's guide to poker. I wanted to do a girl's guide to history, a girl's guide to politics, and talk about times in history where one vote made a difference, which was what my field was in. And so I think they're absolutely correlated. But I did directly get into it through writing. And, my original idea for my book, A Girl's Guide to Poker, because I didn't really know much about poker, was learn poker in under an hour. That was going to be the book. Okay. Because I figured it couldn't be that hard. And then, it became this whole journey learning more in depth how to play. But I signed the book deal within about 1 year of learning how to play poker.
That's
like 1 year
awesome.
starting. Yes. Right. So
and it's not a self-published. This is D&B Poker.
No, it's D&B Poker. I actually, it was very rare. I sent like a teaser to 3 different poker book publishers. Like, someone told me, just Google, the poker, like, where do you want to be published? 2 out of 3 wanted it, which was pretty extraordinary. And I remember speaking with D&B Poker's Dan and Byron.
Yep.
Fantastic people. And that's how we became connected. And I remember them telling me the story of receiving my email. And they said they got an email from me and they were like, oh God, another person wants to write a book, and that was the reaction, like, unsolicited. And so one of them went to the restroom and they said, by the time that he came back, the other one said, we have to publish this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said that in their 2 to 3 decades of publishing, I'm the second person that they did unsolicited that way.
And that's not just, blowing smoke. I know, not Byron as well, but I know Dan very, very well. And, these guys certainly know what they're doing. They've published autobiographies, strategy books. Clearly they must have seen something special, and, pretty obviously that is the case. That's a really cool story. Good on you. I mean, what is it that you sort of, I studied linguistics. I'm, very into writing myself. What is it that you find, I don't know, what's the word? Sort of your personal calling as far as writing and expressing yourself. Can you talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. So the funny thing is, now everyone brands my book a woman's poker book. When I wrote it, that was never my intention.
Okay.
I simply wanted to write a poker book in my own voice. And I think that's what really has stood out about my writing, is that there's just this really, really strong sense of voice. And I always say, I'm a writer first, poker player second, especially publishing that book. And that's, I think, what gave it an edge, because so many poker books are written by poker players, not by writers. And yeah, I think it's that just really strong sense of tone that allowed it to stand out. Yeah, I think that answered the question. I had somewhere else I was going to go with it, but I kind of forgot.
Sure. Well, you don't just, write your own books. You help other people finish books.
I do.
According to.
I remember the story.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, sure. Go ahead.
So when I thought I was going to be a speechwriter.
Okay.
And about a year out of college, I actually got a job as a speechwriter. I ended up ghostwriting a speech that was delivered at the United Nations. I
Nice.
ghost wrote for some military personnel, and I realized I was terrible at it. And the reason why I was horrible, and this was the worst career move I could have taken, ghostwriting, is because when you're ghostwriting for someone, you need it to be people that hire ghostwriters. They can't deliver a joke. They're hiring you because they're not creative. That's not their strength. And they want something that's a little bit more generic, easy to deliver. And my speeches I wrote, they would be like rainbows and bubblegum. And they were just so clearly an Amanda piece. And, I think now when I coach other people and I help them write books, my number one priority is having their voice get through. And that's why I very, very rarely ghostwrite, because then it becomes an Amanda book. And instead I do sessions where I'm having them read their work aloud and we're editing collaboratively. So it's their book with their tone and their style.
Right. And I did look at LinkedIn before we got on the conversation. You've got this company for the last half year or so called Finally Get Your Book Done. I love it. It makes so much sense because anyone who's ever wanted to write one kind of has, including myself, is like, one day I'll get to it. One day I'll get to it. What was the impetus for starting that company?
Absolutely. So, I've been blown away by the results and the demand for it. So I had a friend, and she's a career coach, and she wanted to write a book about, like how to prepare for an interview and resume tips, kind of like a 20-minute ebook. And she was really struggling. She'd been working on it for months. And she called me on a Friday night, had a conversation about it. And then she calls me Monday morning and says, I got my book done. And, and what I realized is the power and the momentum of having conversation. Here's how you outline it. Here's how you get in the space. And so now what I do, you're spending an hour every week talking about your idea. And I say that I know I did my job right if you can't wait to get off the phone with me. Because you're so hyped, excited, pumped. You've been talking about your book for an hour and now you're ready to get writing. And it really is that true structure, accountability, partnership. And then during our sessions, whatever you wrote that week, we do like a read aloud, which is a great way to edit your work and you'll be able to catch yourself. And then having that third party as an outside voice, like sounding board, is really, really, it's been really exciting.
It's interesting because, lots of times writers, they just kind of like, they get in the zone, they do their own thing. They're into that sort of expressing themselves. And here you are, you just kind of pivoted just slightly, not necessarily away, but I guess branched out and helping others. What do you get out of it? I mean, obviously, revenue and stuff, but like, what are you searching for as far as like, why'd you decide to do that as well as your own writing?
Yeah. It sounds cheesy, but my clients have been really, really happy. And I call it like, it's a finally get your book done, because this is something we all know people that have a book in their head for years.
Right here.
And just, you're right there. Exactly. Yeah. Even you, and you run a writing website.
Right.
Right. Exactly. So you have your book idea in your head for years, and being able to get that idea from out of your head and into reality is so powerful. And our first session, so I call it like the brain dump. It's like a big outlining session. And what I do is I just have them talk for like an hour, hour and a half, however long it takes, tell me everything. And I take bullet points and I take notes. You're like, this needs to be in there. And then this, and then, and I love this point. I want, this quote speaks to me, put that in there. And we just write it all out. So by the end of our first session, number one, you can look at it.
That's amazing.
It's on the page, it's in the bullet points, and we're already making a difference from that first hour.
And I can tell it's clearly, by the smile on your face also, like that, you get a lot of fulfillment out of helping someone do that. That's a pretty cool thing.
I do. And it sounds funny, but it's really exciting to be able to use my degree as well, because, there's a lot of conversation about humanities degrees. It's funny, the night I met my husband, he told me he was an English major.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a writer. And he goes, stupidest thing I ever did. And I remember my thought in that moment was, it's never going to work out.
Oh no.
And here we are 4 years later, right? So,
Right.
and being able to, a lot of times they say when you have a humanities degree or degree in liberal arts, you don't always start off, with that secure job right out of college, but a lot of times 10, 20 years later, the salaries level out.
Mm-hmm.
And it really teaches you critical thinking. Because I was a Jewish studies major, I was editor-in-chief of the Jewish newspaper, which gave me so much experience in going over articles and editing and working with people and things like that. And that's, what helped launch my writing career and getting in the newspapers I did. So I feel like finally all of those things that I learned with engaging with literature and different writing styles and how to think through certain topics and situations, and obviously there's a long Jewish history of debate. So, being able to engage in conversations and make conversations powerful and effective and turn them into meaningful interpretations has just been so exciting, so extraordinary. And I know people don't want to hear this, but my message is get an English degree, get whatever studies degree you want to get, whether it's Jewish studies, art history, do the funky degree, because you don't know where it's going to take you in the future.
I love that message. That's great. I mean, again, a fellow English major, so English linguistics, so definitely resonates with
right.
me.
Linguistics. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's
yeah.
funny how I got into linguistics is, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I'd want to be a doctor once upon a time, took a year off, went to yeshiva and I studied. And then I just like, well, I know English. Let's see what the English department has to offer. And this is here in Israel. And I was like, linguistics, what's that? And I looked at the potential syllabus, like the curriculum over there. And like half of the courses looked interesting. I'm like, oh, it's like science and language. I'm like, oh, okay. What am I going to do with it? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And as you said, like very eloquently, eventually you do sort of figure it out because it equips you with so many skills, that critical thinking, ability to express yourself properly. And, then I'm here doing what I do. So as you do say, it does level out eventually, and everything you said resonates. And I will also say, having read a lot of your writing, you express yourself verbally just as eloquently as you do with the pen or with the keyboard. So not just saying it, it's pretty cool. Like you have a very precise way of speaking and delivering your message, even verbally. So that's pretty cool. You also have this didactic streak. This one kind of like made me go, oh, she teaches at SMC, Santa Monica College. You're an instructor. You teach poker in the classroom. How did that come about?
Well, that was during COVID.
Okay.
They want me to continue teaching. We'll see based on my schedule.
Okay.
Yes. So at Santa Monica College, which is a community college here in Santa Monica, they have a continuing education department. And and I knew someone who was teaching classes there, and they gave me a contact, and I went through a screening process to be able to teach their poker class. And I devised a curriculum and basically what we would do, and it was one of their most popular classes during COVID. Yeah, of course. What we would do, this is what I do when I still take private poker students a lot. And whenever I do, tutoring, I think I offer kind of a unique service compared to many poker coaches, because I don't do hand histories. So what I do is we watch YouTube clips of hands, but we like have a discussion about it. So like we pause it and it's different layers. So in the class, because you have people at different levels of study, right? Beginner, intermediate, advanced. So starts like level 1. Is this a good card for Philhellmuth or a bad card for Philhellmuth?
Right.
And you say a bad card. And then, you say a good card, right? And then it says, great. So the next level, should you bet or check? And they say bet. And then we look at the pot and we say, okay, you're going to bet how much? And then we do that before while we're pausing the clip, and then we can compare that with the hand. And then I think what's most interesting with going through these videos, a lot of times we'll stop and pause and rewind different tells and body language. And that's kind of, as I get older with my poker career, that's my main focus and interest is different tells and what people give away language and conversation.
It's really I'm like, what made you think, I'm going to go and teach this to, yeah, sure, continuing education, but like, I'm going to go and do a college course. Where did that idea come from?
It's a good question.
You
I
just
did
feel like,
think it was a good resume builder. I'm not going to lie. So I thought, in case I ever did want to teach, it was a good, at a different community college or college courses in who knows what, given all my different interests here. But
right.
I thought it was a great foot in the door. And I
Yeah.
thought that, I'd really developed a curriculum based on the hands I thought were meaningful. Obviously, I made slides as well with different flashcards and things and, and odds and stuff like that. But so much of it is like a deep dive group analysis, going over a hand and thinking about it, not passively, but thinking about it actively. And of course, that's really fun. Like everyone is a poker player that loves to like nerd out and get into it. It's extremely enjoyable, and it's a little bit unconventional compared to what a lot of other programs offer, where it's more focused on the, technicalities.
Sure. Well, what's something that you've learned from your students?
What have I learned from my students? There's a lot. I think, everyone comes to the poker table with a different MO, right? Like a different background, different experience. And you really learn like people's context and where they think from. And when you're starting out, it's very, very tempting to be like wrong, right. And I used to say, this is terrible. I used to say, when you're getting judgmental, you're getting better, right? Like, cause like when you first start to play poker, you think, oh, I won that hand. Great. Oh, I lost that hand, whatever, and then you start to get better and you're like, how did he beat me with king 3?
Right.
You're like, what an idiot, what a donkey, right? And you start to get really judgmental, but kind of learning to kind of understand the mindset and personality of why this person is playing king 3. What's their relationship with money? Why are they sitting at a poker table? Are they there to play properly? Are they interested in getting things right? Or are they interested in breaking the rules? Just really trying to get into their headspace and embracing that everyone can be right in doing that and having different motivations, I think is fascinating. And when there's so many layers when you're watching that with the hand, and then you're watching what the student brings to the game.
Right. And I guess that sort of helps you with your own game to a degree.
Completely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you ever considered playing professionally?
I've considered it. I really only like, I think tournaments are by far my better game than cash. Cash games are fun. Sometimes I get, a little bored of the grind. And I think I have more of an edge in tournaments because in tournaments, there's a lot more incentive to bluff and apply pressure and all these things. In a cash game, you're playing like a 2-5 game.
Yep. You
could literally be a profitable player and never bluff. You could just play, you could just play good hands, value bet appropriately and just do the math and you'll be fine. And the poker tournament, if you never ever bluff, you don't have a chance of being a winning player. So I've thought about it. My husband played professionally for over 10 years. But I think poker is absolutely amazing. Sometimes I think it's a little difficult to make it your only thing. And I feel like now that I have other things going on in my life with, my writing program and service, it's actually made my poker game better than when I was just focusing on poker and having all the pressure and intensity, on them not hitting their gut shot.
Sure.
Or me hitting mine, right? It's like, so I think that having other things going on in my life actually makes me a better poker player.
How often would you say that you get to play or that you choose to play?
Well, I do play every week, but for me, that's, I was playing at one point in like 2018, like every day.
Yeah, that's obviously more of a professional kind of a thing. But once a
Yeah.
week, maybe even twice a week, I think that's certainly the serious recreational player type
And
of
that's how I would probably classify myself.
yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And where's home games, or where's your favorite room? You're in Southern California, so
I like Hollywood Park Casino. I find it to
Mhm.
be the friendliest in LA. And it's obviously it's the closest to me as well, but I think it's a lot of fun. Although if I were to be 100% frank, because I know people have conversations about women in poker, and we talk about what we can do to get more women in poker. So when I first started playing at the MGM National Harbor, it was beautiful. I wasn't playing to win money. I was playing because it was a fun place to be on a Saturday night. It was, and I think a lot of, at least I can speak for myself. My primary motivation was social and activity and some, and I wanted that experience. And I remember, and it was gorgeous. It can compete with any Vegas casino.
Mhm.
And the lobby, you walk in and there's these giant flower displays that it's
Sure.
like the Bellagio. And then I remember going to the casinos in Los Angeles, and they were rough. And I remember thinking, if this was my first experience when I started playing poker, I really don't know if I would have gone into it.
Wow.
Because it wasn't, I've gotten cheated at the Commerce, gotten hustled there. And, where besides the atmosphere kind of not as attractive and beautiful flowers and things like that. Like I actually at the Commerce Casino, I thought that a guy only had like $50 left in his stack. And so I set all in, and then he pulled out several hundred chips out of his sleeve. And the floor looked at the cameras, and and everyone at the table was shocked, and the whole game broke. And the floor looked at the cameras and said, from your position at the table, there was no way you could have physically seen that he had those chips hiding,
right?
But we're not going to pursue it. Yeah, because it was too much trouble with the gaming board. So yeah, and it was like, for me, like that's the kind of stuff that happens at seedier casinos and things like that. And you kind of have to have more of a chip on your shoulder. And so being like this kind of young, bubbly woman in poker, if that was my first experience, I really, I think it's 50-50. Even someone from like me who like lives, breathes, talks, speaks about poker, I think having a safe, comfortable, lovely atmosphere makes a big difference. And, it's never going to be 50-50 just because men and women have different motivations, but it should be more than 4%.
Yes.
Yeah, it should be more than 4% like women in poker. So I think one of the things in bridging that gap is you really need to think about what are some of the things that motivate women besides making money. And one of those is the ambiance and the atmosphere. And that may sound silly and that may sound small, but from my personal experience, that's what made the difference. And that's what made me get hooked.
Yeah, I hear that. It's not, and dare I, extend that a little bit further. Not just women, the commerce, the commerce isn't for everybody. I've been there. I love it. It's like you imagine this, the World Series, but like that, on a daily basis, you have like this gigantic room, tables going all the time in big metropolitan area. The Bike, Hollywood Garden, the Gardens Casino, like, some of the biggest poker rooms in the world. They're not fully fledged, Vegas resort type casinos, but there's plenty of poker there. But like you said, it's not exactly that welcoming ambiance necessarily. This is like, okay, you must know exactly what you're doing. I've heard a lot of stories and, angle shooting, that type of stuff, but to have the floor not rule in your favor after quite literally admitting that you were in the right, that's very unfortunate. And I can understand, like, the game breaking and you never wanting to set foot in an establishment like that again. Yikes. That's a rough one.
It was rough. So yeah, I just feel like the little things make a difference, and atmosphere, comfort, all it totally matters. Because sometimes I bring, how like guys have a girlfriend that sits behind them, they play poker. sometimes I'll bring like a friend of mine who's like a girl. And so, I really have to preface it whenever I bring them to a casino here, like, so, it's especially because I usually will play entry level stakes, like the 40, just to show them what the cards mean. And I'll say like, it's not exactly Vegas, right?
Right.
It's a little rough, it's all these things that these hoops. And yeah, so it really, really does make a difference. The atmosphere, particularly for beginners of all sorts, if you can make
Sure.
it a more fun place to be, then people are more likely to want to stay.
Right. And just a little note, not everyone necessarily has played in the California poker rooms. You mentioned very briefly the 40. That refers to 1-2 with a minimum buy-in of $40. That's unique to Southern California poker, as far as I know.
And
I've
an
never.
$8 drop.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, because you
Yeah,
got to
so
fund the
it is
jackpot.
right. Yeah, and for all the poker I've played, I've never even gotten a table share. So,
Same here.
Oh really?
Yeah, let's get that royal flush together. You can be, the winning or the losing hand. Oh, well, someday that would be very nice.
Someday, right? Get a table share. So yeah, it's just a game that you play to like, you know, just show people what the cards are and what it's like, and be more casual and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think that if we want more women in poker, we need to pay attention to a lot of things that motivate women. And sometimes that means, like I've said before, my father and I had our tag team victory, the number one thing you can do is more tag team events. And the reason why is in 2019, I believe, my father and I played our first tag team tournament, Planet Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was shockingly about 30% women. And we never see a tournament that's 30% women.
Right.
Ever. Right. And what were they doing? Well, the reason why, it was because it was a tag team. So one, a lot of women who wouldn't have the confidence to play on their own would play with a girlfriend.
Sure.
Or they would play with their husband or their boyfriend. And again, they wouldn't do it on their own. Two, women tend to be more fiscally conservative. And so you're splitting the buy-in.
Right.
So it was like $120 tournament, $60 each, but you win, you still won like 2,000. Like it was totally fun. And it became obvious. And it was the same reasons that I got into poker, because it was a social atmosphere. And so when you have events like a tag team, I actually think, in addition, and possibly even more so, and not just getting women in the game, but how do we get new people in the game? Because poker has a problem as it gets tougher with getting new people in the game and making it friendlier. And I really, really believe, even before my dad and I, our story, in the power of tag team tournaments.
Yeah, it's one thing as a media person. I do this type of stuff all the time, just always promoting and marketing the game and sending those messages. But it's certainly something else hearing it from someone directly based on your experiences, and just proving how those experiences really do matter, to the negative of like, it shouldn't be like this, and to the positive, it should be more like this, and this is how you grow the game. It's pretty cool to sort of hear that from you. Just before we get into the tag team event a little bit, because I definitely want to hear that story, and I'm sure our audience does as well here on the CardsChat podcast, just about your book. Like they say, no, don't read the comment section of the YouTube videos, but what has the, I'm sure it's been kind of fun. To the best of my knowledge, the book has been incredibly positively and well received. What sort of feedback have you gotten that, really kind of struck a chord and was very memorable to you about your book?
I got consistently told the same thing by poker news outlets. I got, like, for example, take Poker News. I was begging them to review my book, and it took forever. And then they said, oh my gosh, I was dragging my feet. I didn't want to read a woman's poker book, and I absolutely love this. And now I'm recommending it. And that was consistently, because there's a stigma, right? It's like, it's like girl push-ups, right? Is this like poker light, poker light, blah, blah, blah. I want to do real push-ups. And it was consistently, and I guess this is kind of a metaphor for women in poker, it was consistently underestimated. And then in the reviews, it was like incredibly positive.
Awesome.
So, and another person who was actually a woman, she was like, I forgot what poker news outlet she wrote for, a different one. And she was saying, I thought I was going to have to sugarcoat this review. And then she was like, but I genuinely loved it. And it's been forever since, you know, because she writes about poker all the time, since I've actually wanted to play poker. And then she said, you know, she wants to play poker, girlfriend. So it's been super fun. It's been super exciting. The women at Poker Power have been very supportive about promoting the book and recommending it to our beginners, because I really wrote it as the poker book I would have wanted when I was trying to learn basically from scratch. You know, I knew hand rankings from my dad, but I didn't know much else. I remember sitting at a poker table, and it was a revelation to me that a guy said, you know, those fish that call the whole way with bottom pair? And I was like, you're not supposed to do that. Like I just had no idea.
Right.
And I remember like the first time I learned how to raise, and then I just raised every single hand.
Right.
That I was getting so much credibility because I'm playing like a 1-3, you know, one's gonna raise you back at those stakes. Yep. And then it was just like, you know, for me, kind of learning from scratch, learning the hard way, and me trying to decipher all these books that were way too hard for me to understand. I wanted to write the friendly intro to poker book that I would have wanted to read.
Excellent. Well, I was just laughing a little bit harder because the woman was Jennifer Newell. She reviewed.
She was for you, a card player, right?
Yeah, for Cardplayer Lifestyle. So, but yeah, definitely. And she has been in the business for 20 years or so doing poker writing. So, you know, when I saw her words as well in that review, it was like, wow, that's definitely saying something. You know, it wasn't sugarcoated in the slightest. So you know, you and your dad, you know, it's well documented. You had that third place finish in the tag team event. What made you decide to play the game? You know, to enter that event together with, you know.
So it seemed like a natural fit. My dad and I playing, you know, obviously he taught me how to play poker, and we've had some really cute moments leading up to this. Like I remember my very first time I played poker at a casino with my dad. I had just started playing in DC. So this was like probably my third time playing poker, and I was terrible. Like I was so bad that, so I would count out my chips, this $5 chips, in increments of 10. So like 2 in a pile. And my dad, he just asked me point blank, it's just being totally serious. And he says, do you do that to annoy people? Like I was taking that long. And so I clearly don't know what I'm doing. And I remember we broke even, and I was so excited. We're racking up our chips, and this one guy's playing loose crazy. He raises, and I look down at kings, my last hand, and I re-raise him, and I barely know how to put in chips. So I'm like the typical like little girl, you know, completely playing face up. Obviously I have like kings. Right. Okay. And I re-raise, and he goes all in. And I look at my dad and I say, I'm sorry, Dad, I have to call. And the guy has ace king, and he hits the ace. And I look at my dad and I said, I'm sorry, Dad, I have to call. My dad says, I would have been more upset if you didn't call. There you go. Right. Like that was like the dynamic with my father. And the last story leading up into the tag team was, so my dad, he plays cash games, but he never played tournaments before I started playing. And I bring him to a few tournaments, just local casino dailies. And he realizes he can't really get his footing, and that this is kind of a different game. And so what I do is I set him up on an online poker website with free rolls. And they have a daily free roll. Well, they have multiple free rolls. So you enter for free. The tournaments would have about 700 or 800 people. They would take 7 hours. Okay. If you got 5th place, or sorry, if you got 10th place, you got 25 cents. And if you got 1st place, you got $2.25. Nice. And my dad's, just for reference, his normal cash games as a recreational player is $5.10. Okay. Dollars. Yeah. Yeah. Blinds. So that's his normal shtick. And so I set him up on these free rolls, and I start getting messages from my mom. What is your dad doing until 3 a.m? Why won't he get off the computer? And then I start getting messages from my dad. Hey, I'm in 20th place. Hey, I'm at the final table. And after 3 weeks, he had over $4 in that account from free rolls entirely.
I love it.
And that's just the kind of person that my dad is, right? Like that, you know, he used to be an accountant, now he's in real estate, but it's like that disciplined, you know, methodical. He really wanted to understand the game. And he learned, and this comes into play with how we went so far in the tag team, is, you know, he comes from a generation where you don't re-raise queens.
Yeah.
And you learn that online, like pocket eights is the nuts. Like in a free
Right.
roll, like you are like really strong. And like, you know, and like shoving light, and you know, it's like,
Sure.
you're right. It's just a whole nother world.
Mhm.
And so we go to play the tag team event. Well, before I get to, I'll let you guide the conversation before I
Oh,
talk.
no, that's fine. Go ahead. I want to hear the story. You're telling it very well. Go ahead.
Okay, so at the tag team event, so it's day one, and my dad blows it. All right, he like overplays a pair of aces on like a super straight board, can't fold it. And I'm like, and we basically agree, I'm playing the rest of this thing. Okay, we have like almost no chips, day one, right? We're almost out. And I'm like texting him and my husband, like at the end of day one, you know, we're basically out of this thing. And we barely make it to day two. And I remember my dad and I were pissed because the tag team started at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And that meant that we couldn't do the 11 a.m. tournament. Right. And so it's like, here, we're going to use up our whole day. We're at the WSOP. We can't play anything else because we're going to play this dumb tag team thing for like 2 hours and then bust. Right. So I'm playing, you know, I'm getting some shoves through, I'm catching some cards, starting to like give us a comeback here. And I'm getting texts from my dad. Please, can I play? I really want to play. I won't blow it. I won't blow it. You know, I'm not going to lose our chips. Please, can I play? And then I say, fine, I need to eat lunch. All right. Because there's no breaks in the tag team, right?
Right.
30 minutes. And then I get tagged back in. Okay. And I play one hand. And during this one hand, a guy tries bluffing me for all of our chips. And it's a very good bluff. I mean, it's a check raise all in on the river. But it was a complete body language. Like he looked scared on the turn. It was like a Doyle Brunson, you know, look me in the eyes and I'll see your cards.
Right.
Yeah. And so I called for 2 reasons. One, because of my read, even though his story was very sound. And 2, so a lot of people during the tag team, they said, I would call here if it was my chips. Like, I don't want to screw over a team. And I remember thinking, you know what? I have my dad's blessing. Like whatever decision I do, I know my dad's going to back me up on it. And I think that gave us a huge edge because of that, I was able to make the call. If I was partnered with anyone else, I probably would have folded as well.
Wow.
But I knew that he was on my side. So I play one hand, call the bluff correctly. Now we got chips and I'm shaking. Like my hands, like so much adrenaline. So I text my dad and I say, Dad, you're back in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of the tag team and why it's a team effort. It's having someone, you know, pick up the slack, you know, to like give him the rope. And it was a blast for hours and hours. And he got the tougher table draws. I'm not going to lie. Like he had, was it Jeff Platt, right? The commentator, right? Him and his teammate and Schwan Liu and Melanie White, like he's getting the tough table draws. And I remember, and this is where his age comes in. I remember texting him. So my dad says that poker's really changed for him because when he was 25, people thought he's this young, aggressive guy that bluffs all the time. And so people would play a lot more, like he would just play trappy, right? And now he's 65 and everyone thinks that he never bluffs because he's a senior guy, right? So he said that what was working for him, he had to change. And so I asked him, how's it going? And he says, we've won every hand for the last hour and I've bluffed every one of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And he says people were pissed. He said they're like 65-year-old guy betting, gotta fold.
Right.
Gotta fold, right? He's gotta have it, you know? And so he really carried the torch for some of the hardest parts of the tournament, pretty much all of the later half of day 2. And it was so fun, like cheering him on. I'm like getting the poker news up there, the updates. I'm texting him, I'm texting my husband, trying to explain a little bit to my mom, like, this is good. You know, we're winning. Dad's doing great. She doesn't quite know poker talk, but
sure.
So it was like the most fun experience I've ever had, like playing, and I was not playing. And by the time I ended up tagging at the very end of day 2, but by the time we made it to the final table, it was a true team effort. And it was funny because it was like, we were on cloud 9, you know, we were getting Lon McGarren, like tweeting about us. And, you know, we felt like celebrities. Like we walked in for the second day, for the final table, the third day, excuse me. And, you know, we're like, we want to interview you and we want to make a clip, you know? And so there's all this buildup. And then the very, very, very first hand of the tournament, we're almost out.
Oh, God.
And it was completely my own doing. But it was, so what happened was.
This is day 3, yeah?
Yep, day 3, final table.
Yeah. Oh,
okay, there's this guy. It's funny because at the final table, 3 of us had been on the same table for most of day 2, which is very rare. So we kind of know each other plays. There's this guy, he had been bragging about his tournament wins. He thinks he is so cool, right? And so it's the very first hand of the final table, and he raises. And I'm thinking, it's like he knows what I know, what you know, what I know.
Sure.
He's figuring that none of us have ever made a WSOP final table before. We're all probably skittish. So he's probably going to be raising really light. So he raised from the cutoff. I'm on the button with King Jack offsuit. I 3-bet him, I re-raise. The woman next to me in the small blind very disappointedly folds. That becomes important later. So she folds, he calls. Flop is Jack 9 8. Sorry, or Jack 9 Queen. It's like I had a 1 over and a gut shot. There was a Jack and a 9, and I had the card. So, and there was 2 clubs, and I had the king clubs. Check, check. Turns like an inconsequential card, like a 4. He bets into me, I call. And the river pairs the 9. So it's like, oh, I remember King 10 penny straight. So it's Queen, 9, Jack, 4, 9. And the front door clubs come in, and I have the king clubs. And he puts us all in. And you know, and I had like the perfect blockers. I blocked the straight and like I blocked the flush, and, you know, is he really going to go this hard with ace queen, you know, type thing. So, and it was just that same moment. It was that same, will my dad be disappointed in me if I fold? Wow. Do I really have his backing, you know, to make this crazy call? And the first hand of the tournament, when everyone's thinking we're like, you know, the father-daughter duo, where we could really be out. And I was like, no matter what I do, I know my dad's there for me. And so I made the call, and we doubled up our first hand. Well, he left us like with 1 big blind. So we essentially doubled up. And then so that's lesson 1 is that was a true team. Like I consider that a team call because again, I knew that I had the support. And then the other thing, that woman said she folded Queen Jack.
There you go. Okay.
Right. And if I had, because a lot of people, they're scared, you know, sometimes the best defense is offense, right? That's why I 3-bet the King Jack. If I had called with the King Jack offsuit, you know, like a fish being like, you know, but this guy's raising light and I know my King Jack's ahead. And so I call blah, blah, blah. She would have called with her Queen Jack suited. Right. She would have flopped 2 pair. I would have had the 1 over card, the gut shot, the backdoor flush draw. I would have had to call, and I would have been crippled.
Unbelievable. Like, you know, it's it's the sliding doors, you know, one little thing changes and it, you know, completely changes the direction of the story.
Totally.
Unbelievable. At what point did you sort of, you know, beyond the fun and the thrill and, you know, playing with your dad and all this Yeah, it's like, you said you want me to guide the conversation. No, no, this is your story, and it's like, I mean, you have me in the palm of your hand, and it's just like, wow, this is a very cool thing. At what point did you and your, maybe it was even at separate times, you and your dad believe, hey, maybe we can make a run at this thing and make that final table, maybe win bracelets. When did that happen?
When we started to get in the press updates. And I
Okay.
remember there was a hand where my dad was like up against one of the pros and they're like re-raising him. My dad's like stationing with a pair of threes, and he's like hanging on for like dear life, the typical, you got ace king, right? And one of these, big name pros is trying to run over my dad. And he calls and that makes a headline, and it's like, because I just got married, but I'm in the process of changing my name. So right now my dad and I have his name. So it's like Team Bottfeld,
Yep.
Makes the call with threes. And all of a sudden after that hand, we had one of the biggest stacks in the tournament. And I remember thinking, because we actually started to get, a big stack, but we weren't getting any attention for it. It was like, here's the players to watch, X player's still in the game, Y player. And I'm like, well, we have a lot of chips, but we're not getting noticed. And then it was when they noticed, and it was, those things make the difference. And I think that's the experience being at the WSOP, because actually, backtracking a little bit, the very first day when we were almost out, at the end of day one, my phone had ran out of battery. And I texted, my dad is playing cash games and my husband, was on standby. And I texted them, my phone's going to die. I'll meet you at the tables when we bust. Right. And my husband had the wherewithal to check the updates, and we'd gotten interviewed for it. Hey, I'd won a small pot with the hand. Right. And it was like 45 minutes later after I said, my phone's died, we're going to be out any minute. And he had been texting my dad, you're still in.
Nice.
And so it was like those little moments when it became real for other people, when you got to make a headline, when you got like your name in print, all of a sudden it came to be like, this could really happen. So that was super duper exciting. And that's when it materialized. But I remember, it was an uphill battle, like until the end of day two. Like I remember being in the hallway on a break and, that song, like, oh, we're halfway there, living on a prayer. And I remember like going, it was like that. I was like, a chip in a chair, like, like living on a prayer. Cause we were not favorites in any way, shape or form.
Right.
So, but yeah, once we had that pocket threes headline, that was the moment where it's like, we could do this.
So, I mean, it's a dream run, and of course, you have this, it's called a dream run for a reason. You have a dream. Oh, wouldn't it be incredible to win a bracelet, that sort of thing. But then you find yourself sitting at the final table. Final hand comes. You finish third. Are you just still on that cloud nine, or is there a little bit of disappointment?
I was very pleased. The hand couldn't have been any more standard. And it was like a no regrets hand. We were three-handed. We kind of dwindled with our chips a little bit. And one team had just a massive lead. And we were three-handed and I had ace five and like no chips. And he had like ace six or ace nine, but and we both thought we were going to chop, and he ended up turning a four flush. So, but I just remember I would have thought it was like something stupid or regrettable if because I remember he raised the button, I shoved the blind, if I'd tried, to make a move and it didn't work out, or if I had a really good hand, like I had pocket kings and I lost to the stupid ace nine, it just felt like completely standard. It was just my time to die. Okay. And so the fact that we made it to third place was great. I remember about halfway, like when we're down to we were all in at a flip at one point. We had, when was like half the final table been eliminated. We had ace king and one player at jacks, and the flop was like a desert. It was like queen deuce three. Might have been actually queen deuce three. Like there was not a lot going on for us. And I'm standing up, my, dad's, it's like everyone's silent and the turn's the ace. And it's like this gasp, right? It's like, oh, like breathe in, like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And the river was clean, right? So we doubled up and I'm trying to be respectful. And I look over at my dad and he's doing like the dorkiest dance I've ever seen. He's like, and he's floating and I'm like, this is not like how you're supposed to carry yourself, right? With the etiquette, but like doing like his happy 65-year-old dance, like so giddy. And that was a turning point because it's a big, any final table is extraordinary, but that was like the difference between being knocked out in like fifth versus third, which is or it might have even been sixth versus third, which is huge and very pivotal.
Right. Well, I laugh about it because, of course, you're not supposed to gloat, but that wasn't like a, neener,
no, it wasn't mean-spirited.
This was just pure, unadulterated joy. I think that's beautiful. And I think to a degree, the more, we just get used to this and play so many tournaments or whatever it may be, you kind of lose a little bit of that. I think that's kind of like, even a pro, sees that it's got to just, somewhere deep down be like, okay, he's happy. I get it. There's something very beautiful about that. Obviously your biggest cash to date, that's a not insignificant chunk of change. Did you guys splurge on anything?
Yeah, I played the main event. Which wasn't the most bankroll wise decision, to be honest, but I wanted to parlay the bet. And at the same time, there was something pretty cool about being 28 years old, being a woman in poker and playing the main.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be a goal that, it would take me till I'm my dad's age to accomplish and to do. And I remember being, when you look at the demographics, first of all, the main event's 4% women. And second of all, the number of women under the age of 30 is, you can probably count them on one hand.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty extraordinary. And then on my dad's end, my mom's engagement ring, actually the stone had dropped. And so it was perfect timing. So his win went to an updated engagement ring, but and I didn't do well playing the main that time. It was probably the worst run I've ever had of cards. But I thought that it was really meaningful. And there's so many people, I'm sure, in your audience who their lifelong dream is to play the main event.
Yeah.
And to be able to have done that and to have done that when I did that was really exciting, even though I ended up writing some articles that it was a little bit overrated, but that's a different story.
Okay, that's fair. 10K though, I mean, also, I don't want to pry too deep in case you don't want to reveal, but like, 10K out of one's own pocket, not everyone does that. Did you have stakers, backers, or you had 100% of yourself?
I had most of myself. I did get some backers. So what happened was, at first I tried playing all these little satellites at the WSOP, which I do not recommend. They were not well structured. And I mean, in a way that's a good thing because it kind of is more luck and random whoever gets in. So it's not like the pros are going to win the satellites and then they're going to be in the tournament. Like, it really was anyone's game. It was like a total shove fest, these satellites. And so I blew a little bit on the satellites. And so then I was able to get some backers for the main, but the total investment when you include the satellites was almost 10K because play a $2,000 satellite and it's 500, it adds up. So I did have backers, but I had pretty much committed most of it. Like, I think I was in for 7,500 if you count the satellites.
Yeah. Okay. And no regrets though, like you said, perhaps a little overrated, but as far as like, ticked it off the bucket list, you say worth it, would have done it again?
Yes. Though, I actually wrote a piece for CardsChat about, is the main event overrated? I think poker is changing. I think back in the day, there weren't a lot of options outside the main event. You didn't have the mystery bounty at the win for 2,200, which is an amazing event that I've played before. And it's so fun. And you didn't have, the flip and go and all these twists and all these different fun, the tag team, these creative spins on poker. And it's a grind. When Chris Moneymaker won the main event in 2003, it was 5 days.
Yeah.
Last year in 2021, I believe he didn't make the money until day 4.
Right.
So you're right. So you're playing for 4 days without even making the money. And it's hard. It's not
a day or two of a break as well. It's not 4 consecutive days. There's like one
Yeah.
AP and so
You're
it lasts a while.
Right. So you're sitting there. Yeah. So it's not quite the, the same fun run that I think it used to be. And obviously poker is a lot tougher now, more studied.
Yeah.
And because there are so many satellites in the main event, my table was like, who can min cash more? Like it was like the people folded kings pre-flop, people folded top 2. Like it was just like the nittiest, tightest, most tense table. And it wasn't, I've played, for example, that 2,200 at the win event where it felt like fun. And what I expected going into the main, and a lot of it depends on your table draw, but I expected we were going to like battle it out, and 3-bet. And I can't tell you how many hands I would open and everyone folds. And when you're like incredibly deep and like, so it just, if you haven't got the chance to play the main, don't feel bad. But people like they're not, there are now more alternatives. And as poker continues to, I think COVID gave it a big boost. People playing online, and as it continues to grow, and especially as it continues to get more creative, and also as there are more high rollers and more options, if you want to play something where you really feel it, you can really win big money. I think that all the emphasis on the main event, there actually are more avenues now.
Nice. I like a very refreshing perspective. It's not necessarily the be all and end all. We do have some community questions for you, but before we get to them, I'd be kind of remiss if we didn't talk a little bit, at least, about Poker Power. How did you first get involved as an instructor with that wonderful organization?
Yes, they approached me, one of the teachers, because they'd heard about my book, one of the women's poker Facebook groups. And I was one of the probably OG 5 teachers or so. And I had a big say in helping develop the curriculum alongside Melanie Weisner and some of the other great instructors, like such as Kind of England and Sarah Steffen. And but Poker Power changed a lot. We were originally teaching high schoolers, and now we're teaching corporate women. I have a conference in San Francisco on Thursday where we're teaching to Bank of America. So our demographics completely changed.
Cool.
And in a lot of different things that I learned from teaching different ages as well.
And so they just sort of like found you, and that's how that relationship began?
Yep. They reached out to me and they said, would you be interested in teaching poker? And at the time, because this was right around when the pandemic started, my husband and I, who we were the boyfriend, girlfriend, we basically got stranded abroad. And so we really needed remote work. And that's also when I started teaching the Santa Monica College classes. So we had a 2-week trip planned to Niagara Falls in Canada. My birthday's March 8th. It overlapped my birthday. The Falls View Poker Series is just ending in February. So we were going to stay there for about 2-3 weeks. And then COVID happens. And my husband's flight to Ireland gets canceled because he's from Ireland. And what was supposed to be a 2-week trip turns into 6 months stranded in Niagara Falls. And then we needed a country we could both go to, right? Because Americans couldn't go to Europe during the pandemic and vice versa. So we went to Mexico and we spent 1.5 years living in Cabo, adopted a dog, got married. And that's where I taught most of the Poker Power classes from our apartment down in Baja California, right?
It's a very cool story, hearing this back end, because you see a person's name in print and headlines, and obviously you and I have known each other for a while. You've done some writing for my site as well, and then for CardsChat, and just sort of hear that all of this was going on in the background, and to you kind of roll with the punches in life. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, and especially during a pandemic. But it's definitely cool to peer behind the oh, well, what's that word? Oh man, I lost my train of thought. It's
Peek
the
behind the
sneak
curtain.
peek, behind the scenes. Yeah, beyond the curtain. That's the word. Beyond the curtain. Very interesting. And I just a little nugget you dropped there. How appropriate, someone who wrote a girl's guide to poker. Your birthday is March 8th, which is International Women's Day. So that's a pretty cool little nugget there. Just let's do one more poker power question. Your work with them, what is your goal? And obviously, they as an organization have some stated goals. You can find it on their website, pokerpower.com. Join Poker Power, right? I believe is their
yes. You can also do pokerpower.com. I believe their Twitter's Join Poker Power.
Right. What is your goal as an instructor for your students as well as for yourself? Because it does take, you've got a lot going on, so it does take your time. So what are you hoping to accomplish and achieve as an instructor, and also sort of for yourself in this role?
Absolutely. So when I first started teaching for Poker Power, we were teaching high schoolers, and they were crazy. They were like going all in all the time. They were trying to bluff each other. And at first I was like, what are we doing? We're teaching these 15-year-old kids just this horrible gambling. And then I thought, 15-year-old boys are doing the same thing, right? They're going all in, they're trying to bluff their friends, they're not playing perfect poker strategy, right? And then when I started teaching women who were 45 instead of 15, I would start to get questions. Like a woman actually, who was an executive at Neiman Marcus, she asked me, why would I ever bluff? And I started to get questions like I would say, to win, you have to win. And then they would be like, that wouldn't land. And they weren't, something had happened between 15 and 45 where they had lost that spark. And that's what I want to do with Poker Power, is put women in the driver's seat again, and to feel the rush of having the big win, of not, whatever happened in life that got them to be more conservative. Because we teach corporate women now, so they're women that kind of do things by the book for the most part, right? They do things the right way. Especially, we teach so many women in finance, and it's, very structured. And so that's my goal, is to get them back to that space where the world is your oyster. And when I say female empowerment, I don't take it lightly. I remember when I was 23 and I was at a pivotal point in my life, starting my career, and having a bunch of chips and going all in felt big. And it felt powerful, and it felt like whatever else was going on in my life, I had a say in it, and I got to take control. And so for me, that's what I want for women to experience, is that being in the driver's seat, putting the foot on the gas and going for the win.
I gotta say, and I've enjoyed hearing all of your answers. I've enjoyed your storytelling and your origin story, but man, if there's like any sort of like a little highlight clip, it's got to be that answer. That was just, wow, you really had me. That's phenomenal answer. I'm sure that's the type of I don't know, that voice really resonates far. And again, not just with women. I think
Yes.
Men can really take that to heart as well. Whether for your own play or for women that hey, maybe she should get into the game and look into Poker Power and see what the instructors can empower them with, instructors like yourself. I've got one last question before we move into the questions from our forum members here at CardsChat. How about goals, whether, away from the felt in poker or at the felt as a poker player? What's sort of next on the horizon that you kind of want to tick off your to-do list, and and your your achievements list in this industry?
That's a very good question.
That's why we saved it for last. Thank you.
Right. Yes. You know what? That one should be easier. That one stumps me in terms of the poker achievements. It's funny. I feel like our tag team win was amazing. And I'm almost scared to play the tag team again because, we could just be out day one. And my dad's like, we got to get the bracelet. My dad's like, this is our opportunity to win it. I actually have never played the ladies event at the World Series of Poker.
Okay.
So I'd like to do that. And
Nice.
who knows, even though I have my reservations about the main event, it would be absolutely amazing to run deep and to cash in it and try that. What I'm most passionate about in poker, and it's the last thing on poker again, is live reads, and the articles that I kind of have cooking are more on, when someone says something about, their son going to law school at the poker table, what that means for how they play a hand. So that's what I'm getting really into and exploring the psychology behind it. And then in my own personal life, I'm about 6 or 7 months into starting this service for helping people write books from start to finish. And I feel like it's going to the moon. So, it's
Awesome.
like people have it's working and you can see it. And I had one woman, she was actually an early client of mine. So I was very nervous. So I wanted to, make sure I did a good job. And she had volunteered at animal sanctuaries throughout South America and wanted to write about that. But she wasn't the most academic and she didn't have the most writing experience. She actually worked as a welder, which there's not a lot of female welders, right? So she worked as a welder and, and she was, kind of tough, like going in Bolivia and Argentina and taking care of animals.
Sure.
And so she wanted to write about that. And she was a little bit more basic in the way, she'd speak and write. Again, she wasn't the most academic, but she had this story she wanted to tell. And I remember getting an email from her, like I had to reschedule a session saying, by the way, I'm really enjoying this process.
Oh, nice. Wonderful.
And to have her every week doing her homework, doing her writing, and then looking so forward to when we're going to do our collaborative editing and writing and making it sound elevated with the language and do all that, but still sound like her. That's, for me, that says that we're onto something here.
So if someone out there is listening and has a book that they really just finally want to get done, how would they reach you and get your services?
Sure. I have an email form on my website, finallygetyourbookdone.com. And send me an email. Say what your book idea is. We'll schedule a phone call, 30 minutes, talk out your idea. You'll get in the zone, you'll get excited, and we'll see if it's a good fit. If you have that dream of writing a book, then it can be extremely satisfying.
Excellent.
And who knows where it'll take you. Just like, look at, here we are now in a podcast.
Exactly. Well, this is now, we'll turn over to the segment of the show where we go to our CardsChat community, see what questions you guys wanted to ask our guests. We do have a dedicated thread on the CardsChat forums for this. So as we announce who our future guests will be, please be sure to send in your questions. We've got 4 question askers today. Chica Bonita wants to know, Amanda, do you still play poker with your father, whether in a home game or online?
That's a great question. We play all the time. Sometimes I go to Hollywood Park and there's this woman that's there all the time. She goes, "Where's your dad?" So we play all the time together. I try to drag him out to tournaments. It's funny now. It's not fun for him unless he gets to play with me. Aww. So he doesn't play on his own that much, but we will absolutely father-daughter play together. Great question.
Awesome. Love it. Great question, Chica Bonita. She's got another one for you. Is there a specific country, city, or other place where you would like to see poker developed further?
Honestly, the United States. I think that there's when you look at, so in my poker book, there was an area that got cut, which was a history of, first I want to do a history of poker, but you can't really do that unless you do a history of gambling.
Right.
And you can't really do that unless you start with monkeys, who play double or nothing. You like, it was literally from the beginning of time, and I've looked like all the way up, and, in different references, in Bible, Torah text as well. Like I went to the bottom of this, okay, all the way up to the present. And what was consistent is that card games in America had a unique appeal. And I don't think it's an accident that it's called Texas Hold'em. And you look at George Washington kept a card playing log every 2 weeks. His biggest win was at Annapolis for 14 pounds. And Thomas Jefferson, while he was writing the Declaration of Independence, would actually take gambling breaks. And the state of Pennsylvania, which is like one of the most, liberal states, has that reputation, right? Was given over to repay gambling debt. There's so much in, I think, American spirit, enthusiasm, energy. And when we lost online poker, I think we lost a piece of ourselves. And I think that the American spirit and the American dream and that Chris Moneymaker, countryman Cinderella story, it's no accident that it happened here.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of our identity. And I think when we do things like ban online poker, and in California, one of the reasons why poker is so tough and the card rooms are so tough is because you can't have slot machines. Yeah. So it just becomes a card room, or as opposed to like this atmosphere where people are able to gamble and explore. And there's such this connection between, I think, gambling and business and entrepreneurship. It's all related. How are you going to use your capital? How are you going to work with your money? So I think it may sound cheesy or cliche, or, like I'm really stretching it here, but I think that the American dream is absolutely tied to the poker dream, and we need to go all in here at home.
So, I mean, I live in Israel now, but I am a dual American, U.S., and Israeli citizen. And damn, your answer makes me go, yeah, America. Very much so. Great answer. Thank you, Chica Bonita, for that question.
Special emphasis in New York. I think there needs to be casinos in New York, and that's where we, so many of our people came through Ellis Island. But that's
there you go. There you go. Shells has a question for you. Amanda wants to know, what do you like to do most in your spare time?
This might make people laugh. I am an avid astrology enthusiast, and my own personal YouTube channel has 996 subscribers. I'm not going to reveal it because it's going to screw up my demographics. But because if you have poker people, it'll confuse the YouTube algorithm. Okay. But I absolutely, that's my favorite thing. And when I first met my husband, I asked him what's his birthday, and he said November 8th, and I said right answer. So I enjoy doing particularly compatibility readings, and it gets into what makes people tick. Which relates to poker.
Interesting. Well, I can't say I'm into it, but I'm November 3rd, so I'm also a fellow Scorpio. Maybe that's why.
Right answer. Right answer.
Okay. Acid Burn FX always asks some creative questions. So wants to know, Amanda, if you could immediately solve any unsolved mysteries in history, what mystery would you choose and why?
My goodness, that's quite the question.
Yeah, right?
Let me think about this.
We'll give you a time bank shift. Take a moment.
Yeah, I might need a moment here. If I could solve any mysteries in history. Try not to get too political. So let me try to like
that's
keep
fair.
It a little bit more. Yeah. So I was doing a project back in, this is all, I'll keep this nice, but back when I was working for more politically aligned organizations, I did do a project, times in history where one vote made a difference. And this was times where in American history where it was positive change, or it was very significant change, like big moments, like the Fair Housing Act, which, guaranteed housing rights to, minorities and people of all backgrounds. The Senate majority leader had to go, or minority leader had to go against his own party, which is unheard of in today's climate. And the draft, which for better or worse was pivotal, passed by one vote. And so what I would like to know in the mysteries of history, what are the things that didn't happen as a result of 1 to 5 votes?
Wow.
What are the times in history where if someone had made a decision, it would have butterfly effected and changed the outcome?
You obviously paused, took a pregnant pause there for, before answering that question. What a phenomenal answer. Wow. Great question, Acid Burn FX, and excellent answer. Now you got me curious also. I'm wondering, like what?
Yeah, because and it was a hard project because there's not like some list. I'd have to research times where it did make a difference. But yeah, you wonder about what are the times that we were this close?
Yeah. My
what are the times that, because that, I did the project because we were losing a vote for the organization I was working for, and we were like 8 Congress members away. But it's like, but even then, what if we had gotten those 8 representatives? How would that change the landscape of even 2022?
For sure. One more from Acid Burn FX. Amanda, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
Ooh, if I could have one superpower, what would it be and why? I'd like to be able to teleport. And the reason why is right now, my husband and I are in a very long green card process. There's a huge COVID backlog, and we're long distance married. So I'm going back and forth between right here in Ireland, or sometimes here in London and Mexico, and all these, we've traveled the world to do everything we can to stay together.
Wow.
And you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is midnight my time, but I stay up at this time because it's 8 a.m. his.
Right.
And so if I could teleport and be, in 2 places at once, or even just whatever place he's at, that would be my superpower.
That's sweet. Well, we'll only do a couple more because I'm sure you would want to say good morning to him before you go to sleep. So we'll just get to Crystal's in here. Crystal's wants to know, did you do anything different or specific before preparing for the final table of the tag team event with your dad?
Tremendous question. Great question. So it happens. It's, the World Series of Poker, they like for the main event, they used to have the main event and then they have the November 9 several months later. So people could prepare a lot.
Right.
For us, it wasn't quite between day 2, day 3, but leading up into the tag team. My dad and I, we got behind the computer. I was like, these are the new school strategies. I was like, Dad, you can bet smaller, and you can do this. Right. And so we did do like a father-daughter study session. Awesome. So we did prepare. And I remember him saying at the final table, because at one point he was playing for us and he got very unlucky, aces to ace queen. And he said, if I hadn't bet small, like you told me to, or like we went over together, we would have lost our stack.
Right.
So he was like, so we did study, we did do preparation together. And then literally leading into it. So I just published an article talking about like a WSOP countdown. And one of the things I learned is get Twitter rolling, because that was the night before. We were all over Twitter, and, I had a Twitter account. My dad did not. And in case you do have a sun run, you want that up in case people say things about like the chips or the rooms, or like there's all these controversies about Lammers this year. You want to be following accounts on poker Twitter. You want the algorithm to know. And the guy, I forget his name, but who, was a fan favorite for the main event last year because of his dirty diaper hand. I think it was Rigby, right?
Yeah, Nicholas Rigby.
Right. Nick Rigby. He didn't have a Twitter account and everyone was talking about him. And he made one and he's busy playing the main event, like at the very end of it. And he only got 200 followers. Whereas if he had that up and rolling, he would have been able to use the platform, to have the sweat, to have the fans in it. So the night between the final table and day 2, we were all over Twitter. So
Awesome.
my advice is have that running like a well-oiled machine.
Awesome. And what is your dad's Twitter for those who want to follow?
Yeah, he's got like 5 followers. Follow him. His Twitter is D Bottfeld. It's spelled the same as my last name. D is in David, and then Botfeld. He doesn't even have a profile picture. He needs followers, and you like a tweet, I'm sure he'll get a notification. So absolutely, that's how we prepared for the WSOP, is we tweeted.
I love it. That's great. And then you got all this talk. It makes me really want to meet your dad as well. 2 more from Crystal's. And I'm curious as well, what initially drew you, Amanda, to write articles for CardsChat?
The people. I was between publishers, right, with my book. And the reason why I went with D&B with Dan and Byron is I really felt a connection and heard and all these different things. Like for my book, because it's printed in full color and has illustrations, or has photos, I resisted that because I said, I don't want this to be a book of sexy girls holding cards. And they worked with me, and we came to the conclusion that they actually let me work with the graphic designer and put together a stock photo library. So it was like by women, for women. Actually took longer to find photos for the book than to write it.
Wow.
Because every page, it had to be like that curated. And we would go through, like a friend and I, like hours to find the illustration or the photo for each paragraph. And it was through Dan that I got connected to you, and I got connected to Dan from CardsChat. And it was really, poker gets a bad reputation because there are, some sleazy people, and I'm sure we can all read the news, but especially on the writing side, you being one of them, Robbie, I've met some really genuine people, some really amazing people. So what drew me to it is, good old fashioned networking. It's like, you want to work with that person, you want to shake their hand. So that's what drew me to writing. And of course it was a natural fit because of my writing background.
There you go. Cool. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Last one, and we'll wrap up here. Crystals wants to know, with all of the attention that women in poker are getting right now,
Yes.
what do you think the lay of the landscape will be in 3 to 5 years in that regard?
I'm so glad she says 3 to 5 years, because it was before, like when you were talking about the beginning of that question, I was about to say, like, this is too soon to tell. We're planting seeds right now.
I think
And
it's
then
he, by the way. I think Crystals is a he. I'm not sure.
Oh,
yeah, CRSTALS is Crystal there.
Oh, I thought, okay, gotcha. I think that's a really insightful comment, because I look at, especially what we're doing with organizations like Poker Power and Plon, which I'm involved in, all these places. Women are learning, but they're not there yet in terms of being at the casino. And you think about, all the before Black Friday, there was a long time where guys were sitting behind a computer practicing before they ever played live. And, we might need a few big breaks. We might need a woman, with the final table or some new faces, and we might need some more representation and things like that to happen. But I think the future is definitely bright in terms of women in poker. I actually worry more about men in poker and just getting new people in the game at all, because I think that men tend to have more emphasis on competition, and poker is getting more competitive, and the barrier to entry is getting higher and higher and higher. Yeah. And I think a lot of the women that I see in my classes that are entering poker, that's not really on their radar. But a lot of the guys I talk to, like, they want to know if they can win. And it's, so I think that things are moving in the right direction. Sometimes it's it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Not everything is positive, but I think it's really, really interesting what's happening in the space. And I think it'll take 3 to 5 years to what's happened between 2020 and 2022. I don't think we really know yet. And I don't think it's really come to fruition, particularly in terms of women in poker. I think what's happening right now, we won't see the results of for a few years.
Nice. Well, it's an exciting time to be a part of the industry. And this has just been a lovely conversation. I want to thank everyone who sent in everyone's for Amanda Botfeld, and just a friendly reminder to all of you out there in the CardsChat community. We'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forums. Guys, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes. Spread the word via your social media channels if you liked the show. Amanda, before we let you go and ring David up in the morning, anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Anything else I would like to share? I think about who I was at 23 when I didn't even know how to hold my cards right. And people at the poker table were rightfully saying you played that hand terribly. And I was making those flashcards and I was studying in the game. And, I felt like I said, like this little girl. And now I'm 29 and I feel like she would be proud. And I feel like, thank you to the CardsChat community for making this an actual community and an effort. And again, when we talk about more women in the game, I think it starts with social and it ends with community.
I love it. Amanda, thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of the CardsChat podcast. I'm Robbie Straczynski. You can follow me on Twitter at Cardplayer Life. I wish you all a wonderful day.